welcome to Neurodiverse Leadership Toastmasters. This is another meeting. It's a demonstration meeting to help get a sense of what this club would do and become if we chartered. And one of the things that I'd like to help illustrate while I open our slides is that we are a Toastmasters Club, which is a global organization around the world with over 350,000 members. And part of that is we are trying to help develop our leadership and communication skills so that we can all become leaders and grow in our professional development and personal lives with more confidence and growth. And basically, part of this initiative has been inspired by work of Judy Utal, who is a parent and a distinguished Toastmaster, who had the initiative to help her son start a Gavel Club. And there's research evaluating the value of Toastmasters to help autistic adults. So we're trying to build this and take it to the next level. And so if you can bear with me as I share my screen, part of this is an initiative that we're hoping that as a pilot group, you can all be a part of or support or share so that we can raise awareness about neurodiversity and then find a way to celebrate it with action that helps us move forward as a society. Now, as I mentioned, Toastmasters is an organization that has already built a framework that we can follow. So this is the framework that we're trying to out as a pilot group to see how we can be supportive in complementing each other's different perspectives so that we can empower each other in these leadership and communication skills and get those benefits of having more advances in our personal and professional lives. Now, as a specialty Toastmasters Club, we're focusing more on neurodiverse leadership, which it means that we want to figure out how we can work together with the different perspectives. Because I've been a part of so many clubs where sometimes if you're like in an all women's group or in an all Asian group, you get comfort and you find commonalities and you find support, but we're missing the other perspectives that help us grow. And so I think that's what we hope to see if this is a format that can help us do exactly that. Now, today's agenda, you can see, is in the, feel free to type it in the chat, or if you can't see this, it's I will type it later, or if one of the co-hosts can help me. This is the agenda for our next two hours. And what we are normally going to do would be to welcome our guests, but since there are so many, we'll save that for the virtual super hour, if you can stick around afterwards, on how you found us and why you came. But today's meeting theme is to celebrate that it's okay to be different. People have different brains, and that is part of the normal range in humans. If you think about evolution, we evolve differences so that we can survive, so that we're not wiped out if something happens to one of us. Or for a particular genetic code or protein or gene and so forth. And so one of the things I want to do is to also find out and introduce the role of the Toastmasters format so you can get familiar with it and how we can integrate these two concepts to find a way where we can learn in a structured and actionable way so that we can educate, engage, and also elevate the neurodiverse community. So to help me with that, I want to start out with one of our roles, which is Travis Cameron, who is our grammarian, if he'd like to explain briefly his role as well as introduce the phrase of the day.
Thank you, Jenny, and good afternoon to Toastmasters and guests all alike. So today's phrase of the day is going to be the autistic spectrum. It's a noun, a range of neurological and developmental conditions that affect the development of social and communication, learning, and behavior. So as grammarian today, I'm going to be keeping tabs on use of this term, this phrase of the day, as well as similar terms. And also just in Toastmasters, we just generally track patterns. So we also have someone on the team that's going to be going through filler words, but I'll be looking more so to see patterns in our speech today, who uses things like the phrase of the day and other themes that we may find along the way. That'll be most of it, and I'll give a report on that towards the end of the meeting. If I'm missing anything else, Jenny will cover that. And back to you, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Travis. Next up, we have our Wizard of Oz, Aletta, would you like to explain your role?
Yes, Jenny. As the Wizard of Oz, I am the counter. And that just simply means that I will listen very carefully to all of the speakers and note any words or sounds used as crutches or filler words. During the meeting, I will also listen for words that are overused, including and, well, but, so, and you know. I will also listen to sounds such as er. I will also note when a speaker repeats a word or phrase such as I, this means, this means. At the end of the meeting, I will report the number of times that each speaker uses these expressions. But if it's more than 5, I will simply say more than 5. Thank you. Back to you, Jenny.
All right. Thank you so much, Aletta. And our timer, who makes sure that we're on track, you can also briefly describe your role.
As timer, I know that one of the things about being on the autism spectrum is the desire to have rules and structure. As a timer, I will be aiding in that by displaying the cards at the specific times needed. So for example, in table topics, the green card will be displayed at 1 minute, the yellow card at 1 minute and, well, 1 minute and 30 seconds, and the red card at 2 minutes. Now I'm going to be covered because my screen shifts and for me it's jarring. But what will happen is you will see the various cards displayed in this manner: yellow, green, yellow, and red. At the end of the meeting, I will either place times in a chat or I will give the report when called upon to do so.
Thank you so much, Joni. And next up, we also have some roles to help inspire us even more. Amar, would you like to profile a leader?
Certainly, 1 second. So Ralph C. Smedley, who founded Toastmasters in 1924, was never a person who would have been described as flashy or flamboyant. Rather, he was modestly and quiet individual who worked tirelessly for his passion of helping people reach their potential. And he is determined to make Toastmasters, the organization we are here today, a success. He's quoted as saying, while most of us may have entered Toastmasters to learn to speak, make speeches, the benefit is but to the beginning of the good which may come to us and the good which we may do for mankind. I would like to just bring up the point that when we do a speech, a planned speech, we're here to inform, persuade, entertain, or inspire through our words, so that our purpose is to speak, so that we speak with purpose, so that others can find value in what we have to say. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Amar. We totally appreciate you sharing the founder's history, which leads us to the program which he envisioned in the future has modified or evolved into pathways, which is 11 different paths to help members become leaders through communication or through various projects. Now, if you notice, all 11 paths focus on these 5 different core competencies where we're constantly trying to figure out how can we build our confidence so that we can then express our ideas in public, and then work on teams to collaborate with interpersonal communication skills, and then also find a way to manage others so that we can motivate them to get things done, but also evolve as leaders when things change for your organization and the needs of society. Now, these different paths are something that we're going to explore in the first section of every Toastmasters meeting, which is prepared speeches or projects. So today, there will be a dynamic leadership project. And this path, the first level is usually to build the fundamentals of getting to know each other from an icebreaker, getting evaluations so that you can incorporate the feedback, and then being able to improve and research and present other ideas. In level 2, you get to learn your leadership style. You can choose some electives of figuring out how to listen better, and also share a story of your mentors and how they shaped your success. Now, in level 3, it's building your knowledge so that we can resolve these conflicts that you may occur in life, which is the beauty of life. And then also find a way to connect with the audience, which we demonstrated at our info session at the last meeting, if you haven't watched, and also use presentation software as we're doing now. And level 4 is to apply some of those skills so that you can manage change, manage projects successfully, and also lead in any situation when you demonstrate that expertise to moderate a panel discussion, which is what we will do after this, and then reflect on that path to motivate others who want to follow suit, who also want to try this path or something similar. Now, you'll notice another different path is presentation mastery, and the projects and electives have changed in red and pink, where in level 1, you can write a speech with a purpose. In level 2, you can focus on discovering and understanding your communication style, building on your effective body language. And in level 3, persuasive speaking with other electives, such as understanding vocal variety, and also how to prepare for an interview to get that dream job or get that promotion, and also manage others to nurture their development. And level 4, manage a difficult audience or build the strategy of how do you represent your brand within your organization as well as outside. And 5, prepare to speak professionally so you can raise awareness in your community, your club, your company, and lead in your organization. So moving on, each of these levels, normally each club's officers can figure out where the members are so that we can support their progress. And the beauty of these paths is they incorporate communication and leadership, which is why one of the 5-time presidential speechwriters, James Hume, says, the art of communication is the language of leadership. Now, that brings us to our first project, which is moderate a panel discussion, which I will be moderating with 3 distinguished Toastmasters as panelists. Now, if our Zoom master extraordinaire, Liam, or our timer can help spotlight us 4, I would greatly appreciate it. While we then introduce the panel discussion for today, which is on how can we advance autism at work from 3 different perspectives. And today's goal is to learn how we can educate, engage, and elevate autistic professionals at work with a neurodiverse perspective as leaders. So starting off, maybe each one of us can introduce themselves briefly in 1 minute, starting with Judy.
Hi, thanks, Jenny. Hi, everybody. I am Judy Utah. I'm president of a nonprofit called the Orange County Asperger's Support Group. I am also the mother of a 30-year-old son with high-functioning autism. He's a graduate of Cal State Fullerton and is currently working on a certificate. And for the last 6 years or so, I've been very active in Orange County, working on helping people on the spectrum find employment. Just recently, I ran a career club for college graduates with high-functioning autism, and I'm looking forward to being on the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you much, Judy. Next up, we have Sam Warner.
Hi there. Yes, I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. I've been in Toastmasters for 12 years. So I have 2 DTMs, third one on the way. And I've held loads of different positions, area director, leadership team, all sorts of stuff. You know what you do over the years. In my outside of Toastmasters life, I'm a professional communicator and I help organisations recruit and keep neurodivergent talent so that they reduce their recruitment costs and attrition scores. So it's good for everybody, really. And sometimes that's just a case of helping them create the reasonable adjustments, accommodations and adaptations for all staff. And sometimes it's coaching an individual who needs that little bit of extra help. But either way, I love doing it. I also do stuff like TEDx and whatnot, and on the side, so to speak. But yeah, it's all thanks to Toastmasters.
Thank you, Sam. And of course, we want to add diversity on our panel. Liam Whitney.
Thank you, Judy, not Judy, Jenny, I'm sorry. And good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are logging in today. I am Liam Whitney. I am coming to you from Orange County. I am a special education teacher. I work with high school students with moderate intellectual disabilities. I also work as a blind rehabilitation specialist. So I work with adults who are either totally blind or they have some usable vision, and we do some coaching on how to best use that vision through walking, through using computers, technology, through getting around in the kitchen, all sorts of different things like that. So I am very happy to be joining you here today. Back to you, Jenny.
Thank you. And a little bit about myself is I'm a management consultant. I joined Toastmasters in 2017. You would not believe I could not speak in public. My voice would crack so high, I could not lower it. But thanks to Toastmasters, through practice, I can now sometimes even wing a speech here and there with confidence and learn to smile about it. But also it's helped me learn how to interact with people from all walks of life that I don't get at work or some of my circles or other nonprofit organizations. And that is the beauty of the experience that I've learned from a safe and positive environment where we can all grow together and support each other with the Toastmaster spirit. Now, something that's on the topic of most of people that I've encountered from random meetups when I talk to various neurodiverse individuals includes this: how do you get that job? How do all of these amazing panelists get to where they are? What are your strategies so that you can help impart your wisdom to those in the audience who may want to emulate your best practices or give it a baseline to tweak on their own for their circumstances? And so starting off, what I'd like to hear from Liam, since he just spoke last, in the education environment, what has helped you get your dream job or overcome these challenges in finding this career?
Jenny, thank you so much for that question. I have a few ideas on this. First, I would say to kind of cast a wide net. I think it's important to look for jobs that we can reasonably live with and not necessarily the perfect job right out of the gate. So applying to lots and lots of different things that we think, I think I can reasonably do this job. And from there, maybe I continue to look forward for what would be an even better job, but just starting with getting something I can reasonably live with. I think looking for high demand careers is important too. So I have two careers that are both very high demand. We always need teachers in the special education field, especially in high school. And we always need specialists who know how to work with people in blind rehabilitation. So I think it's important to have skills or develop skills in areas where there are going to be a lot of jobs available. It makes a better opportunity for us to be able to land that job and be able to go forward. Finally, and I think this is the most relevant thing right here, get trained to communicate well. I think we all know a great deal of information. We may have really good knowledge that will help us to get the job we're looking for. But then there's the whole interview process. There's where we need to convey that information to others and do so in a way that makes people think, oh, I want to work with that person. That's really the skill that I think has paid off most for me in Toastmasters when I've been on various, I'll say, job interviews or just in general interviews where I need to convey information with people. I feel so much more confident now than when I began on my Toastmasters journey 11 years ago. I feel that I have the information, but I can also convey it forward. And I think that is so important in looking for any jobs as we kind of continue on our own personal journeys. Jenny, back to you.
Thank you, Leah. Now, with teachers being role models in certain cultures for kids to shape what they do with their lives and how they grow and evolve to contribute to society, maybe Judith can share her perspective as a parent and a retired marketing exec too.
First, thank you, Jenny. In terms of the question about finding employment, it is a challenge. And I think Liam brought up some really excellent points. But I think the first thing is to not be alone. It's a very overwhelming process to find a job. And there are lots of supports out there for you. And you should not choose to do this on your own because it is overwhelming until you understand the system, you feel very confident. But even very experienced people build a network of people that they work with to help them on their career. It may be mentors and people that you turn to get some advice, or it may be other peers who are going through the same thing as you. So it's really important to not do this journey on your own. Also be aware that if you are on the spectrum, there are a lot of government-funded agencies, at least in the United States. I know we have a global audience, but there are resources of organizations that are here to help you, agencies that will offer support. So it's important that you do that. And as you hear me talking, you realize that your success is very much driven by your ability to communicate, your ability to express your needs, your ability to help direct people on what you need and what you don't need. So it's really important that you consider the importance of communication. And that's one reason why I've been active in Toastmasters for about 12 years and why I started a Gavel Club for individuals on the spectrum was to help them build their communication skills. And I've been really pleased to see how effective people become with that practice, with that support, by working on those skills. So all those things are factors to consider when you're looking for employment. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Judith. Wisdom of parenting is definitely helpful as well as a professional and exec to make those decisions. But that leads us to Sam, who actually works for professionals at companies in the UK. What is it like over there?
Well, there's a lot of keen companies out there who want to do the right thing. But when they say they want to do the right thing, the expectation is still very firmly on the shoulders of the individual employee. So they will say to somebody, oh, you just need to tell us what you need. Well, imagine if that's someone for whom this is their first job. How on earth could they possibly imagine what they're going to need in that first office job? It's got to be an ongoing conversation. And more than that, I think employers need to have a list, a published list of reasonable adjustments, so that if somebody needs to have a quiet space to concentrate because they have sensory processing challenges, then perhaps popping them in the corner of an open plan office with 200 people in it is a better move than sticking them in the middle next to Chatty Doris and Fred, who likes to talk about golf all day with his buddies loudly, and then say you can't wear headphones. I mean, there's so many things going wrong all the time that can be fixed for free. And that's what I want employers to understand, that the fixes for a lot of these things cost you nothing. And from the interviews, from going into schools, youth leadership and things like that, it's got to start somewhere. But I think this multi-pronged attack is the way to go for people like us. I'm autistic, I have ADHD and pathological demand avoidance. And it used to be very difficult for me to express myself. But Toastmasters helped me to find my words and refine my message so I wasn't saying too much and people weren't tuning me out. So yeah, we're getting there, I think. It's just a bit slower than I'd like. Back to you, Jenny.
Well, I appreciate everyone's perspective in part because, believe it or not, in the UK and in America, up to 85% of the citizens are unemployed for autistic adults. And then autistic adults are actually the largest group of unemployed amongst the disability groups. And so it's definitely a problem for different countries to consider how we can improve, which is why the next step is, even with these strategies, once you find this dream job, the hardest part is also, it's just as hard as to keep this job. So how do you ensure that your performance, once you land this job, stays on par or not exceeds it, and also you're satisfied with this job? And so perhaps maybe we can start again with Liam in terms of your perspective.
Sure, thank you, Jenny. I feel like to be satisfied with work, a couple ideas I have, I'll go back to finding a career field that has high demand. It's not so easy for an employer to easily give up on us, but also to find a career field with a lot of variety to it. So if we don't like one particular job, maybe we can find something else within the same organization that's a better fit. So finding larger organizations where there's a lot of different types of things we can do can be helpful. But for me, I feel like making sure that I'm organized is very important. Making sure that I have my own ideas. I find myself kind of translating the demands of a job into a language that I can better understand. So I will write things down in a list in a way that I can easily understand, because nobody else is really going to do that for us. Being able to manage time effectively. I think it's pretty common to notice in any field, you may look around and you see lots of people just kind of chatting and wasting time. It's important to use that time to our best benefit so that we are able to meet all those demands and meet or exceed expectations because of that. And I think just constantly reevaluating what's happening and making new plans as we go. So for me, being in a classroom, I may lay out the best possible plans, but a good 5 minutes into that, I may need to make some new plans, and that's okay. There may be a student having a meltdown that I really need to focus on in that moment. There are a lot of things that can happen that can really change my plans on the fly. So making plans, but also being sure to reevaluate and update for the dynamic situations we're in. To me, those are the most important things that help me to enjoy my work and also to excel in it to the best of my abilities.
Thank you, Liam. Now, when we go from this classroom and graduate, we go to the workforce, and maybe Judith has a perspective of both, leading and managing a neurodiverse workforce, as well as parenting. How did you help your son overcome some of these challenges?
I think number one, it starts with communication. And it's really, really important that if you're an employee, that you have a good relationship with your manager and that you carve out time to spend with them. Find out what your manager wants. Maybe it's a weekly one-on-one. Maybe it's something 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there when they have office hours. But you need to understand how you can stay in touch with your manager so that you get continuous feedback, and be open to feedback. It's really easy to be defensive. It's really easy to, when someone criticizes you, to take it personally. But instead, you need to use that input to help shape your behaviors in the future. That's one good thing about Toastmasters, is we learn how to evaluate and we learn how to accept evaluations. And that's a really, really important skill. So if you are confused, communicate. I don't know, I have this to do and I have this to do and I'm not sure what. It's really important that you get clarity. It is so easy to make assumptions and be wrong. And that's one of the challenges, I think, for people who are neurodiverse, is not necessarily reading the room, reading the requirements as well. And the final thing in terms of communication is a thing that I see a lot when I ran Career Club, is an avoidance of maybe phone messages or email messages or text messages, and ignoring those. And when you ignore those, the person who's sending you communication that way feels personally like you don't care, and it impacts your brand. And so communication may be things that you're doing, but you need to be responsive to other people in the format that they want to communicate with you. So those are key. I know last night, my son is in a program and he came back very, very unhappy yesterday between political stuff that was going on and things that were going in his class. But I was really happy to hear that he asked his teacher to have a breakout with them separately in a breakout Zoom and talk to her specifically about what he was going through. That was so wise of him. One, to be aware that he was feeling particularly stressed, and two, being able to suggest that they isolate and they talk about it. And I gave him that positive feedback, that what was really important was to be aware how you feel and to work with other people who can help you readjust and refine things so that you're happy again. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Judith. And of course, we can't forget the perspective in the workplace where Sam can tell us on the across the ocean how it is there.
Well, I often have to help individuals manage up because I can't go in necessarily and talk to their manager for them. But what I can do is try and give them some tools they can take with them. And Judith just mentioned one of the key tools that I say, because when you go to a new job, they say, how do you like your tea and coffee? They don't say, how do you like to communicate? They just don't ask. And I, for one, I can't stand email. It's such a demand for me to look at emails. Can't bear them. But I appreciate that they're a necessary vehicle for information. So I ask people, can you nudge me, text me, message me and say, I've sent you an email and I'll go and find it. I've got purpose. I only have to concentrate on the one email. That's manageable. And that's just an example. But also in terms of clarification with one's leader, manager, peer, whoever, if instructions have been given and the person's a bit doubtful about them, or maybe the person's made an assumption that you know something that you don't, a really good phrase is saying, can I just play that back to you, what I think you've asked me to do? No one's ever said, no, absolutely not. So you say it back to them how you have received it, and if there is a gap, they can jump in and look like a hero and go, oh, no, you've missed this, this and this, you need to know those things. Their ego is intact. You actually know what you're doing. Everyone's a winner. And it's that kind of slightly manipulative, but is it manipulative because it gets you out of trouble? It's a great way of working with other brains. Another one would be in a meeting, instead of asking the person with the biggest ego a question, and they might not know the answer, so they'll be really embarrassed if they say, I don't know, because that's a really hard phrase for them. You could say, do you know anyone who might know the answer to this question? Then they can say, yes, I do, hero. Or, yes, I do know someone. Talk to Fred in such and such a team. Still a hero. Everyone's a winner, and you don't get told off for asking awkward questions in meetings. And I hear that one a lot. Back to you, Jenny.
Thanks so much. These insights actually build upon some of the stats where it suggests that some of the workplace cultures, a lot of autistic or neurodivergent professionals may not feel safe. And that's not just for, it could be any minority, it could be any group where you are not the norm or not the typical model. And so when you don't feel safe, it becomes also important to figure out how do you find ways to make it a safe place to live and work and also enjoy what you do. But also the other thing that might have been missed is that even though one of the challenges getting them employed, the other is also a lot of them are underemployed. Some of them have high IQs, they have great professional graduate degrees, but yet they are resorting to menial, trivial tasks or jobs. So how can we enable and empower these talented individuals where they may have certain sensitivities, as the panel alluded, whether it's light, sound, textures, and other things that maybe other people can't understand. So this leads us to the third topic of being aware as an employer. How can you enable and retain this workforce? Now, since this is up Sam's alley of expertise, maybe we can start with her.
Great, thanks very much, Jenny. I was jumping at the bit to jump in there. I ask both the organisation and individuals to offer an opportunity to talk about the strengths, the things they're really good at, the things that they are able to contribute, and then follow that up with things they might need help with. There's nothing worse than reeling off a great big list of things you're going to need help with, and the person scratching their head going, oh, this person feels like a burden now. I've got to support them in all these things, because you haven't sold all the benefits. Whereas if you can say, I'm an amazing problem solver, I've got this fantastic ability of reducing really complex problems into simple terms, which is great when you're talking to customers. I also am able to generate ideas all day long. I can give you 1,000 ideas. One might be suitable, but I can just give you 1,000 ideas. Now, I might need a little bit of help because I'm not so good if you park me next to the kitchenette with all the smells and the noise. Rather not be next to a slamming door, if that's possible, or the photocopier. I quite like a little quiet spot if that's possible. And otherwise, I should be okay on my own. Now, that does not sound a lot better when I've told you all the great stuff I bring to the party, and I might need a little bit of help with a few things, which happen to be free. So I think having that kind of conversation, both the employer can encourage that conversation by asking, what are your strengths? What do you bring to the party? And if that's not been asked, the employee can offer up the strengths and then go to the things they might need support for. And that way they'll feel listened to, valued, and respected. And it's really important that the same accommodations that are afforded to neurodivergent people are also handed out to anybody who needs it in the workforce. Because as soon as you put it in that this small group of people over here that work in this place, they will have access to these reasonable adjustments, but you lot don't, you're not neurodivergent, and they sit there going, oh, it's not fair, I want to be able to start late, I want to wear my headphones, and then you start bringing conflict into it. So it's got to be everybody has the opportunity to improve their workspace to be the most productive they can be. Back to you, Jenny.
All right. Well, that just leads me into a segue with Judith as an exec, where she can see the social dynamics as a leader in her organizations, as well as the president of her support group, but also partner with different organizations where the government rehab programs. Can you shed some light on that, Judith?
Yes. Thank you, Jenny. I think that Sam brought up about working with your manager. And one thing that you should know is a good manager will get great satisfaction and joy seeing one of their employees succeed. So that's number one. Number two, because of that, if you do feel good about what your manager is doing, be sure and give some positive feedback to them, because that in turn will make them realize that you're happy or that they're being effective in working with you. An example is one of the people in our career club was working for a small startup in the health medical device field. And one of his strengths, and I always think people's strengths and weaknesses are oftentimes the same attribute, but one of his strengths is he's extremely inquisitive. He asks lots and lots of questions. And this sometimes can work against him because people just are overloaded with those questions. But this CEO of this company, who was excited about having neurodiverse people work in his organization, chose to give this person a job where what they had to do was to define every little step that you do in terms of independent skills and define it in very detail-oriented specifics. Now, this guy's a programmer, the person who he assigned this task to. I'll give his name. His name's Savag. Savag, who he assigned the task to, I would have thought he would have given him a programming task, but this turned out to be a really good task for Savag because he felt that a lot of times what holds him up is not knowing the proper way to do something. And so whether it was brushing your teeth, getting dressed, taking medications, he really enjoyed that task. And the manager in turn felt really excited that he had given this person a task that they could prove themselves with. So be aware that management wants you to be effective. And Sam's point about how you can help share what you're good at is a great thing. And then be successful with the tasks that they give you and give your manager positive feedback of, gee, I really enjoyed that task because it did this for me. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Judith. Now, going from that workplace back to the classroom, universities are one of the slower places to adopt and employ neurodivergent professionals from certain stats. And part of that challenge is how can we raise that education early to begin with, since that's where all of these leaders are groomed and go up before they go out to the workforce. Now, one of the reasons why it's important to start there is because employer awareness has been shown to be a major factor as being positively impacting the neurodivergent professional's decision to disclose or not to disclose when they go find a dream job, to request accommodation. Can you share your experiences, Liam, on this insight, or something that you think would help employers be more aware?
Thank you, Jenny. Whenever I've brought this up, I've been pretty well encouraged to not disclose, to kind of continue faking it until I make it. And that has benefits, but I do feel like it has some downsides too, honestly. Now, specific to the classroom, I feel like I'm going to give a little bit different answer than my peers, but that has to do with kind of the realities of where education is right now, and especially over the last couple of years of the pandemic. Now, I have always had the difficulty with getting the amount of supplies that I need. I wind up digging into my own pocket to supply a lot of the things for my classroom. So that's something that an employer could really help with, is being able to speak with the different employees, figure out what it is that they need to be successful, and seeing maybe there is a pot of money somewhere where we can help this person to be successful. I've always had little to no supervision, which honestly in my field can be kind of a good thing, because when supervision comes in, it can be often negative. But it would be so helpful to have kind of a guiding hand to assist with questions as needed, somebody I could lean on a little bit and not feel so completely alone. So I think a supervisor would do very well to just check in with employees and make sure that they're doing okay. Finally, I'll talk about burnout a little bit, and definitely this is true in the United States, may well be true in the UK and around the world as well, but I feel like ever since the pandemic took hold a couple of years ago, that has really exacerbated staffing shortages. We have little to no subs in our school now, where we had a few before. So there seems to be an increased pressure on us to always be there, no matter how sick or how tired we may be. And the kind of COVID policies that are put in place were often changing. They were different from day to day. Some people would be following them, some people would be completely ignoring them. In the meantime, I have to explain to my students why it is that we're following these policies, even though they can see people all around them who are not following the policies. So these were the things that I dealt with. So having a strong leader who would be able to say, these are the rules that we're following, and then enforce them, I think would kind of bring us a lot of ease in the classroom, as well as for myself and the staff who are helping our students. Jenny, back to you.
Thank you, Liam. Now, this highlights the trend where a lot of the employers are now creating neurodiverse or autism at work programs. And it's great that some companies like SAP can retain 90% of their autistic professionals. The problem is it's only 1% of their workforce. So we're just scratching the surface. How can we, as Toastmasters, and help our communities, our clubs, our companies, raise that awareness so that we can make that trend occur faster to realize that vision that we all want to be, where every differently abled individual employee is respected and embraced for their talents, so that we can all complement each other and work together with a more holistic perspective on problems and create that better solution for the benefit of the organization and society. So to close off our panel, I'd love to start with each one of you, you could share how do you think Toastmasters might be able to help you with that, or has it already done so? And why don't we start with Liam again?
Thank you, Jenny. I feel like this is really where the rubber meets the road here, where Toastmasters truly has helped me, and I think can help many other people as well. Now, in the classroom, I'm managing an ever-changing classroom situation. I'm managing an ever-changing classroom team. I alluded to staffing shortages. I literally had 8 different people in the classroom last year who were working as instructional assistants. People would come, people would go. We would constantly be training new people. So being able to communicate clearly with people, especially when we're talking about students with some very unique health needs, this is exactly what you need to do. This is exactly how you need to do it. Communicating clearly with students as well. Again, many different kinds of learning needs in the classroom as well, so that they are able to understand what it is I expect of them and how they can be successful in their learning. I'll touch on job interviews again, just because it is so important. I feel like having the knowledge base, having the skills winds up being one small part of things until we can conquer that job interview, until we can truly sell ourselves and say, this is what I can bring to the table. I want to bring that to the table. I want you to feel comfortable working with me. Being able to really sell ourselves in that way where we are able to really make people feel comfortable with us, I think it's something that has helped me a lot in Toastmasters. And in my career also as a blind rehabilitation specialist, I find myself a lot of times having to tell people that I exist, tell people that I can add some value to your organization as a private contractor, provide some services to different clients. We're such a small field, a lot of people don't even know that we exist. So doing cold calls, stopping in at places and dropping off business cards, that is a skill that is not easy for most people. I think that is a skill that is kind of terrifying for a lot of people. So being able to develop that skill and wind up on the other side, getting that call back saying, hey, yeah, actually, I do have some work for you. When would you like to come in? I think these are the skills that Toastmasters can help us to feel comfortable with and then ultimately excel in. Jenny.
Thank you, Liam. Judith, do you want to share how Toastmasters has helped not only you, but also your son and your family, as well as your organizations?
Yes, I kind of want to continue on with some of the points that Liam was making as well. For me, I've always been comfortable speaking, but I think Toastmasters, that nervousness that you feel before you start speaking, what happens over time when you do Toastmasters is it turns into excitement versus fear. And then all of a sudden you are looking forward to being the person called on to speak. And it's amazing how you go through that transition. And for us to make a difference in terms of increasing the number of people on the spectrum or neurodiverse people employed, I think there's 2 really important things, again, that have to do with communication. The first is everyone has to be a salesperson for hiring people on the spectrum. And that means that whether it's a pay forward type of situation where the mother who is working at Disney, but child isn't going to be destined to work at Disney, should be talking to Disney about employment opportunities and how do we get folks on the spectrum or neurodiverse people employed. Similarly, the man who's working at Boeing needs to have that same conversation. If each of those employers, whether the parent who's working there is benefiting, realize that they should be hiring neurodiverse individuals, then the numbers would increase in terms of the employment opportunities. The second thing is getting rid of the bias. Back when my son was born, the only movie about autism was Rain Man. okay, which I love Dustin Hoffman, but it didn't necessarily provide the type of person that you would necessarily want to bring into employment. He was anxious. He freaked out, even though he was good with numbers. So it's really important that these stereotypes can disappear. And if each one of you were to be as articulate as Sam and Liam and be spokespeople and demonstrate the competence, the brilliance, and the unique perspectives that you bring to the party, then again, we would be getting rid of the corporate bias against hiring people. So it's really up to each one of us to try and make a difference. And I do believe that Toastmasters is a key way of developing the confidence, the skill set, the ability to answer questions, the ability to communicate your thoughts, is really an essential skill to you being able to be an ambassador for who you are as a person and for who we all want this world to be in terms of hiring people. So thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Judith. Last but not least, Sam, your perspective on how Toastmasters has shaped you to the professional speaker, coach, and extraordinaire.
Thank you. So I always loved training and sharing knowledge with other people, paying it forward. I used to think it was a crime that some people didn't have access to training, and I sort of made it my job to help them, whether they wanted it or not. But what I learned is that there were structured ways that I could do this, and that's how my business was born, if you like. I'd wanted to do a TED Talk for some time. I wanted to stand on that platform and be able to articulate myself in the world of corporate. So my TED Talk, my TEDx talk to be accurate, was really an exercise in subterfuge, because it talks about the new rules of engagement in terms of reducing conflict, helping people with difficult conversations, giving excellent feedback, all the things that we've gathered together from Toastmasters, but then employing that in corporate life, because inevitably the reasons why those things happen is because there's communication slip-ups or gaps. And so I'm able to sort of segue into suggesting that some of the reasons why there might be some communication issues is because they will have some neurodivergent employees, whether the employees know it or not, or whether they're feeling brave enough to divulge their diagnosis, depending on what company it is and how they handle it. In the UK, if you're diagnosed with autism or ADHD, you have a protected characteristic of disability. Whether you think it's a disability or not, you're protected under law, which is a good thing, but also that can have a stigma attached to it if the organisation isn't very clued up and educated. So, like I said, we're in a kind of a no man's land, a balancing act there. But what I've seen on LinkedIn especially is lots of neurodivergent people going, oh, you neurotypical people need to understand we need help with X, Y, and Z, and you've got to help us and you've got to meet us more than halfway. And I'm like, but now you sound like a burden, a problem. Now you sound like a whinge bag. Wouldn't it be better if you showed off all the good stuff that you're good at and then talked about the things you might need help with? And I know I keep banging the same drum, and I've said that like multiple times, but I think that is the way forward, to remind people that we are an asset. That's why you would employ us, and we might need a little bit of help. And I think that's the core message we need to keep repeating to employers. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you so much. Thanks to our neurodiverse panel, we have different perspectives that hopefully showcase the value of why we want to have these conversations, to learn from each other, to empathize, and also see how we can raise awareness with all the skills that we're empowered with through Toastmasters program and other resources to make an impact, as Ralph Smedley, our visionary founder, had alluded to in his quote earlier. Now, hopefully the attendees can raise questions. I see one question already. We're a little bit running behind. So Joni, would you like to raise your question for the panel to answer?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I have a problem with why make a rule if it's not a rule. I think that comes from social norms and just understanding maybe somebody one day took something out the fridge in the break room. So you got told you have to ask this person if you need it. But to me, if it's a rule for a reason. My question is, how do you know what's based on implied social norms and what's actually a genuine rule? Because sometimes when you do that, you seem like you're nitpicky, and then the conversation now becomes, but you do this, and you do this all the time. And I'm like, but we weren't talking about that, we're talking about the rules. How do we get around that kind of social interaction? Because then it becomes, well, for me, I don't know if it's for other people, I'm gonna show or prove to you that you're wrong. And by doing that, I'm gonna get other people involved, and it becomes, the best way to describe it, Frankenstein's monster, the pitchfork, because you're gonna try to prove something. And for me, it blows out of proportion when, if I had understand the setting of why something was, then maybe the outcome would have been different. How do you know the difference? Is there like a way that we can tell the difference, or what's a good way to ask the difference?
I'll take this if you like. I think the rule of thumb is if it's been communicated officially, either in your terms and conditions, in your contract, or in a team meeting, or in a vision or mission statement by the organisation, you can take it that that's a hard and fast rule. If it's not written anywhere, I would say it's a social convention, and you can check in with people. If you can find a mentor or somebody who's willing to help explain some of these subtleties, especially in corporate, that will be really, really helpful, because you can say to them, hey, can I just ask you, here's a scenario. Is that a social convention or is that a thing? And if you say it like that, it doesn't sound like you're making a big deal out of it. You're just kind of checking in. And hopefully they're kind enough to say to you, hey, no, that's just a thing in your team. None of us do that. If you want to put, labels on your food in the fridge, go ahead. That's the way to do it, instead of having to go, excuse me, is this anybody's? So that's what I would do. I'd see it as very black and white. Either it's written into your contract, or it's rules and regulations of your team, or it's spoken only and it's actually more of a social convention. And I would just check in with somebody safe.
Anybody else would like to share a perspective? Judith?
Yes, thanks, Jenny. And I agree totally with Sam. A lot of the larger companies that put together neurodiverse hiring programs will assign a buddy, okay? And when I did the Career Club, I assigned colleagues. And it's really important that you use your free time to start building a network of people who you can feel safe with in the company that you're in, where you can ask these questions. And I earlier talked about Savag and his inquisitiveness, and it seems like the person who asked this question has that same characteristic. So be aware that you need to be one of the most important things about communication is the timing, is choosing the right time to ask the question. Is the right time in the middle of a big meeting when the president is trying to explain how they need to make budget cuts? Hey, what about those refrigerators? I don't think so. It's choosing the right time, the right person, and getting the support you need then. It's okay that you have that question, and I think a lot of people like to understand why there's a rule before they're comfortable finding the rule. And it's okay for you to find out the answer to that. But find the right person and check out if this is the right time that you can ask that question, and you'll be much more successful because everybody else will feel that you're not being disruptive to whatever they had in mind for that particular time. Thanks, Jenny.
Leo, do you have any comments on rules?
I think Judy and Sam covered it pretty well, but I feel like just looking around and seeing what other people are doing, what is realistically actually being followed and what isn't, is an important skill. There's that saying that if a a bear is chasing a bunch of people in the woods, you don't need to be faster than the bear, you just need to be faster than the slowest person. I think that kind of applies here too, where if I am making my best effort to follow the rules to the best of my ability, and I know that I'm doing a better job than the people I see around me, then I'm going to take that as good enough. Because honestly, if somebody's going to then come down on me for not following the rules, I have in the back of my head that other people are even more so not following the rules, and I can bring that up if I need to. But I think it's important to just kind of take stock of what's happening around us and decide as best we can, okay, maybe this isn't something that needs to be explicitly followed to a T, or even better, maybe I'm going to follow it myself and be an example for others, but I won't necessarily go beyond that for the here and now. Back to you, Jenny.
Jenny, I just wanted to add one last thing. And it's really easy to be hard on yourself. It's really easy to beat yourself up. And if you made a mistake and you asked a question in the wrong time or to the wrong person, you need to forgive yourself. Any knowledge that I have has been earned through lots of mistakes along the way and then thinking about what I could do differently. So be accepting of yourself and realize that you're on a journey and you're going to learn things on that journey.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking around, as well as our diverse panel for their perspectives. We are going to now move on to the second portion of every Toastmasters meeting, which is table topics, impromptu acting and speaking. Now, this is a fun section of the meeting, in part because it's where the attendees get to participate. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to practice your impromptu thinking, speaking, and acting skills. So normally, this is a chance for us to just ask a prompt and you to give a 2-minute response. But one of the things that this club wants to do is not only use different activities, improv games, and frameworks so that you can communicate your story. And so, for example, Craig Valentine is a world champ of public speaking from Toastmasters, who shared his framework of 9 C's to help to tell a story. Now, Michael Haig is a Hollywood story writer who has 6 steps. And then you've got Joe Campbell, who has the hero's journey with all of these circular steps. Now, it can just boil down to literally, what is the problem? Where's the resolution? And what is the lesson learned? Now, if you're a fan of Disney, there's 9 steps to telling every Pixar movie by Ken Adams. Once upon a time, every day something happened. Then one day there was a catalyst where the character breaks that routine. And it just gets worse because of that, until finally it hits a climax where some mentor, something, someone helped you resolve it, so that ever since then, you are now that unsung hero who has hopefully overcome that challenge. And even if not, you've learned something from that with a moral. Now, even if you're not good at telling stories, at least you have a framework of saying, how do you feel about a difficult situation or a topic? How can you share a relevant story from your experience so that you can convey how you feel, and it's connecting with the other person so that you can now build a relationship where the other person is trying to understand and can feel what you're going through, and then tie that back into a succinct statement so they can communicate with you. Now, perhaps this time we'll try some improv role plays where there's so many different ways to play games. But one of the best ways to agree when you disagree is just the willing suspension of disbelief, like in a movie where it doesn't make sense, it cannot happen, but let's just try to say yes instead of yes and instead of yes but. Let's just go where it's going so that we could see what the other person is trying to say or communicate or head, and see where that flows. And then we can always take turns trying to flip the other ways where the other person plays the yes and game. So to help me with that, do we have some volunteers who'd like to start with playing a scenario where I'll pick 2 people. One person will be following the rules, since we talked about rules, and the other person will be like, why do we need to follow these rules? And let's see how we can agree with this whole yes and improv exercise. Are there any takers if you'd like to raise your hand, I see Sam, our autistic interpreter. Anybody from the audience would like to try? I see Melvin. Great. All right. So the scenario is for Sam, you are in COVID and you want to wear masks to protect yourself from transmitting these germs, the virus, and also protect yourself from getting infected. And Melvin, you are saying, hey, it's safe. It's social distancing. We've already got our boosters. How do you come to an agreement using this yes and technique? Or feel free to try something else.
So where's your mask, Melvin?
Oh, I don't need a mask. Why would I need a mask? I am boosted 3 times. I am safe from anything.
But you could still carry it, and when you sneeze, you could spray it all over me. If I sneeze with my mask on, I'm containing it.
Well, haven't you got boosted?
Yeah, I have, but I might still be carrying it, so that's why I'm protecting you with my mask.
Well, you don't need to protect me. We know we're both protected here with the virus, with the vaccine. So I can see if we're in another room full with people, but we're not. We're isolated in this office alone. We are safe amongst each other.
And look what pretty masks I can wear. I can create beautiful things on my face and draw things on it if I want to. It's what a wonderful way to express my creativity. You're missing out, Melvin.
Oh, well, it hinders my breathing and it's uncomfortable, and I don't care. I like the look of my mustache. So
I love the fact that I know I'm taking all my germs home with me and I'm not infecting anybody. Can you see my halo?
well, once we leave this confined area, maybe I'll put it on. But I'm still reluctant. I don't take it that serious.
Fair enough. I think it's each to his own. I shall carry on wearing mine and I'll protect myself from infecting you, and let's hope it works both ways.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Melvin and Sam. That's a great example of the yes, but scenario where everyone stands firm on their positions, but also finds a way to at least have a conversation. Does anyone want to try to build upon that to take it to the next step where we transform the yes buts to the yes ands of let's see where it goes? And maybe, do we have any takers? Feel free to raise your hand or using the emoticon or through your video. If I don't see anyone, maybe Liam, I feel like you might have a similar experience somewhere of wanting to wear masks or wishing your colleagues wear masks.
Okay.
Anybody wants to help have this conversation with me? Amar. Take it away, Liam.
I feel like it's very important that all of us are wearing masks when we are together.
The pandemic's over. What are you worried about?
Well, in our room together, we have a lot of people who have different kinds of health conditions. And I think it's important to be able to look out for other people.
Maybe that was 2020, maybe 2021, but I don't think that we have to worry about that. Now we have other things to worry about, and I don't think one of them is going to be the COVID-19.
That may be your opinion. I do respect that. I know that some of the people here might not be able to get vaccines for whatever reason, or might not be able to get boosters. It may cause adverse health conditions for them. So I feel like it's really important that we're able to look out for them as best we can, because we are one human race after all.
Yeah, I think you worried a lot. I would wonder what, I don't know if, I feel the same way as you do.
I just want to be sure that while we're together, we're doing everything we can to make each other feel safe and comfortable, because that's something that's really important, that everybody feels safe and comfortable together so they can be at ease and be their best selves.
Yeah. Well, if it's not important to you, maybe then I'll at least put it on for right now. Maybe then afterwards, if when we're apart, I can take it off.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming to a mutual agreement. It seems like you guys finally found a way to see each other's perspective and then at least compromise in the middle or meet each other in the middle. Is there anybody else who'd like to try the yes and exercise, where you see where they're going with their bizarre request or their desire to follow a rule or a policy? Are there any takers? It's a safe, supportive environment to just give it a try. And functionaries, feel free to also raise your hand if you'd like to participate. How about, do I see Quentin? Would you like to try, or Shahan? All right, I see Quentin.
I could give it a try.
All right, Shahan or anybody else want to give it a try with Quentin? All right, I see Shahan's video.
Yeah.
Would you like to start the conversation? And it could be something. It doesn't have to be masks. It could be, as a parent, for your son's future, or you're having a conversation with, let's say Shahan is the teacher or another parent who doesn't have an autistic child. How would you have this conversation about your son's request to play with a certain way, or have these obsessive interests, or grow these superpowers to become a genius?
Okay. All right, so I'm just a parent coming. Okay, gotcha. So Shahan, I realized that you sent me home this letter saying that my son curses. And I just want you to realize that he was nonverbal and he was picking up on language. And that was one of the things that he picked up on, but he's communicating his cursing in the right context. And I'm having him, he doesn't curse as much, but one might slip, because when he does it at home, I haven't been able to show him that that's bad. I'm just happy that he's communicating. So,
yeah, but I get the idea that you are concerned of him speaking finally, but then again, is this the right way to approach it? Like, I mean, cursing, what else? I mean, why can't he like sing or something like that? But cursing is not a good option for a child like this. So that is what I'm trying to say here.
I hear you, but why is it so bad?
I mean, it is bad because he's still a child and he's a minor. So why do we need to tell him that there are some good things that he can do, and there is some bad stuff that people perceive in different ways. I mean, for his own good, people might not know about his condition, so they might judge him and come to conclusions without knowing the background. So why do we make him put him in that uncomfortable position? So I know we have to support him, but then again, we need to think on behalf of him, because he could be like get bullied or get backlash from others. So that was my concern from the beginning.
Very good point. Well, the one thing that we've been doing is we've been getting him to curse a lot less, implementing different words in his cursing, so we could kind of change that dynamic, change those results that we've been getting. And that's him fighting right now. That's the cursor. It's progress. However, I don't see that progress being done this school year. So I'm just asking, as just I guess some sort of help. If you have any ways that you could implement that he could change his cursing here and there into a different phrase to get his point across, I'm open to it. But then I don't want him to get penalized when he's really just trying to communicate. Because other than that slippage of the words, he's very well behaved. He does his work. He follows the rules. He just slips up when he's excited and communicating.
I totally understand it. So here's what we're gonna do. So I'm not gonna be like penalizing him for what he's doing, and we are glad that he's finally speaking and he's being verbal. We'll work together to make it and direct him in a correct path, and so that he feel comfortable of what he's doing, and of course the others not make any comments about it. I think we can come to a conclusion in there. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Like, we'll make it together. I think we can achieve it together.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Shihan.
Thank you, Quentin.
Thank you both for being able to improvise on the fly with the scenario as well, and also play roles that are unexpected. These are all growth areas for each one of us to empathize in others' shoes. Does anyone else want to give it a try for one last exercise before we move on to the third section of the meeting? I don't see any hands up. All right, Travis, is there anybody who'd like to pair up with Travis for a role play? And feel free to, Travis, if you have a scenario you want to choose, feel free to use it as a place where we can crowdsource solutions on maybe somebody else gives you a different response and a way to resolve that challenge. All right, or maybe I will just play along with you. All right,
Perfect.
Travis. Do you want to pick a scenario or shall I?
Jenny, ever since you've been bringing your son to work, every day I realize that my pink, yellow, and orange highlighters end up in the wrong place. I have them all in separate rooms for different reasons. And I'm sure, positive that it's your son because he has that thing about routines and traditions and whatever the words are, putting things in the same place. And sometimes it seems like my highlighters go missing. I've had to buy 10 new packs of highlighters just in the last 3 months. What are we going to do about it?
Thank you for sharing. I didn't realize my son was placing all these highlighters everywhere. I guess he's trying to do good with these highlighters by disseminating all that color in his life, thanks to you. So yes, and I appreciate you sharing this so that I can now do something about this by working with you on how we can solve this highlighter mania from spreading and going to invade all of your different rooms. How would you, is there any idea that you have that you'd like us to try for reducing these highlighters from invading your rooms?
Well, before we start there, the thing I want to start with, because I think we had a meeting about budgets and such the other day. So the first thing that I want you to do is reimburse me for the $75 that I've spent so far. That's the first thing. And maybe even possibly talk about the other $75 plus that I'm going to need for the next 3 months, because I'm sure that's what's going to happen.
That's an interesting idea. So if I were to reimburse you for the $75, I'm curious, what would the next $75 be included, or what can we do with the additional $75 that not only helps reduce these highlighters from being spread all over the place, but is there a better way to use that $75 to achieve more than just solving this issue with the highlighters? Is there other challenges that the other students or sons, or my son is having with your rooms or scenario that we can use the $75 for a win-win?
Well, now that you mention it, it seems like we can come up with some solutions. And a point that you did make is that, you know, the your son perhaps has had some kind of reaction to the colors or the phenomenon of some sort. So maybe it was a chance for us to come to some new beginnings here, and perhaps seeing things outside of the box, because perhaps I just saw the highlighters as highlighters, but maybe they're a way to some new beginnings here and a new environment. So I think we can come together and talk about what comes next. Although I still want my $75 back.
Yes, and I remember the $75, which is why I will talk to my partner and figure out how we can come up with that $75, or maybe find another way to get the equivalent of the $75 that also not only replaces the missing highlighters or replaces something else that you need more, that's even more important to you than these highlighters. I really appreciate you thinking from my son's perspective, where he obsesses over highlighters because it gives him color, it gives him something to do or something like that. And so I appreciate you being more lenient to understand that this may be one of the trade-offs, but he probably contributes a lot in other ways to your class or to your community. And I'm happy to explore that with you further. So it seems our time is up, but I will remember the $75 no matter what, thanks to you. All right, so we are up to the next section of our meeting, and it prompted me that I totally forgot to introduce Melvin as our joke master. If he wants to warm up the audience, now we've already been warmed up, to release some of the tension from all these scenarios so that we can not only build trust with each other, but be liked when someone laughs at our jokes.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. I thought you removed it from the segment, but I had a lot of things going on in my mind, thinking about a lot of things, and everyone tells me the voices in your head are not real, but they have some good ideas. For example, when I feel like exercising, I just lay down till it goes away. These are crazy things that go on. I perform stand up, and one of the things that the COVID has done, the pandemic has done, is stopped me. So I haven't performed in 2 years because I didn't want to get back on stage during this pandemic. So I looked at some of my material that I thought might be appropriate for this segment, and I'm just going to use it. And one of the things I want to share with you, that I'm a born native New Yorker and I love this city. It's a beautiful melting pot of culture. Just every ethnic group that you could imagine. It's the most diverse city on the planet. Wherever you're from, you've been here. And my family took advantage of that. We've married everybody. And we pretty much get along pretty well together. But I have some family in the South that like coming to New York every year during the holiday season for the shoplifting and what they call the amazing subway entertainment. So if your family's anything like mine, it's like a great big almond joy candy bar, mostly sweet with a few nuts in it. I grew up in a pretty tough neighborhood in New York. We had to travel in groups for protection. Yes, I became a member of the Spectacle Freckle-Faced Gang. Nobody feared us. We were known as great negotiators. I remember in elementary school going up to kids saying, "Give me your homework. I'll do it for you." One kid came back to me and said, "Stay away from me and my homework. You got me an A," reported me to the principal, said I was ruining his reputation. We didn't have a great deal growing up. I grew up in an impoverished neighborhood, but we were fortunate enough, my parents was fortunate enough to provide us with 2 TVs, one with sound and one with picture. It would have been even more fortunate if we had them at the same time. I am a survivor. Yeah, I'm a survivor. I've been married for 40 years. You know you've been married a long time when you look at your spouse and you see their mouth going like this and you don't hear nothing. Thank you. I'm Mel Garlick. There's a few. I hope you appreciate my jokes. Back to you, Jenny Lou.
Thank you, Melvin, for sharing the power of humor so that we can all get a laugh in the world when it's so serious or when things are not going our way, which is a fact of life. Things will always go not our way at some point, and we have to figure out how do we resolve it? How do we cope with it? Now, this leads us to the third section of every Toastmasters meeting, which is evaluations to give us feedback in a constructive way to improve. We just had improv, but now I'll introduce Melvin, our general evaluator, to lead this section.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize I was the general evaluator. Okay, all right. Well, the meeting started on time. It was a great meeting. I enjoyed the way you started off with the panelists. And I'll give you a little more detail, especially with the panelists. And you shared a lot of information. You brought a lot of insight on neurodivergent. It's just very educational. It just opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I'm supported and behind you 100%. I grew up in a family, I kind of relate to it because I grew up in a family with a developmentally disabled brother. And he's still, he's high functioning, but he's always been dependent. Still living with my elderly mother, and he's now going blind. So I can identify with much of the issues that go on here, and I'm an advocate for special needs and treating and identifying the special needs. So I appreciate this meeting. So there's also helpers here that I want to call on the meeting. We have the timer. I want to call in a timer so the timer could give the timer's report.
Thank you, our general evaluator. How are we doing on time? Well, it depends on the perspective from which you are looking at the current time conundrum we find ourselves in. If you're a rule follower and are a stickler, we're actually behind time. But if you appreciate the fact that we have gotten to engage in various ways that are not usual, and the fact that we lost time either getting clarification on our concerns or getting the opportunity to not have to practice speaking these scenarios, but actually get to see it in real time, not just the voice in the head, then we're doing well. For Melvin and Sam, it was 2 minutes. For Liam and Amar, 1 minute and 54 seconds. For Quinton and Shannon, 3 minutes and 48 seconds. And for Travis and Jenny, 4 minutes and 6 seconds. Were their table topic time, which means only our first 2 teams qualified for the table topic time. We are actually behind time at the moment. We are actually scheduled to wrap this up in 1 minute, as in everything, but hopefully if we go quickly, we should make time up. Back to your general evaluation.
Thank you, Madam Timer. With that said, let me call immediately on the R counter. I forget.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Melvin Garlick. As the R counter, I listened carefully, and I'm going to share Jenny Lou had 2 R's and more than 5 ums. Travis had 1 R and 1 well. Amar had 2 R's. Sam Warner had 1 so. Liam had 1 well. Judith had 2 R's, 1 3 so. Quentin had 1 R. Shayfa Paul had 1 1 so, and Melvin had 1 so. If I didn't call your name, I didn't hear any filler words. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Thank you, Aletta. So our grammarian was Travis, and I want to call on Travis now for his report.
Generally well. Oh, I think we have to go with the project evaluation first. Toastmaster Jenny, would you be able to confirm it?
Sure. So Melvin, would you like to call on Shahan to evaluate the project for
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. The project evaluator, Shahan, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, General Evaluator. So today I feel humbled and privileged to be here to have this kind of audience and to be the evaluator for this wonderful panel discussion. So Toastmaster Jenny attempted the project related to dynamic leadership, moderate a panel discussion. And throughout the session, I was listening to every single word, what is like this, the importance of the topic. I would like to congratulate Toastmaster Jenny for selecting the topic and the discussion, the contest for this discussion, rather than I have seen people related to this project itself, people doing lots of panel discussion, but without an end result. But here in today's panel discussion, what is important that we discussed about neurodiversity, and we discussed it especially how it affects the corporate world, how it affects the career life, how it affects how the communication plays a vital role in neurodiversity. So that is a very timely topic. Rather than talking about just neurodiversity, the topic selection was quite precise and specific, that we talk about the corporate world and the communication. So it gives us more deep, we had a chance to have a more deep conversation and a more precise and a very clear cut conversation with the panelists itself. So the first thing I would like to congratulate is the selection of the topic and how precise it was with regard to the context selection. And then the questions and how the structure of the panel discussion was organized was quite amazing, because we had a good introduction. We came to the problem rather than just jumping into the contest. We had a good introduction, and then smoothly with the questions flowing, connected to each other, had a clear-cut flow within the panel discussion. This is again some mistake that I've seen in different panel discussion. We tend to have questions which are not connected, and they might seem all over the place. But today, Toastmaster Jenny's panel discussion had a proper structure and organized structure, so that the audience, us, could get every single idea clearly, because the panel discussion was engaged in that way, in a structured, organized way. So I like the flow and the effort she has put into the panel discussion itself. Rather than just making it just a project of her pathway, she has made it like making the designing flyers, Eventbrite, and booking Eventbrite tickets, and made it, there was an effort put to it, because it is what is important. We need to work on, and we need to reach an audience, because these are sensitive topics, and these are topics that we have to talk, that we have to discuss. So the effort that she has put into it is commendable. Now, if I talk about a little bit of recommendations, one recommendation would be the engagement with the panelists themselves. Because now, I know that you might be following a script, but this is a panel discussion. Rather than make it an organized, pre-planned event, why not go with the flow? When they are making a comment, as soon as, when you are moving to the next question, when you're transiting to the next question, before that, take some time to comment on what the previous speaker has said, and make some reactions while they're speaking, while they're laughing, while the other panelists are waving their head and they are agreeing with it. You engage with it. I know when we are the moderator, we are kind of afraid of the next question. What is the next question? We have all it in mind, so that sometimes we get out of the action. But I believe make it a conversation rather than a question Q&A session, so that it is interacting and you, in the process, learn something new for yourself. So be actively engaged with the panelists themselves, so that everyone, and including yourself, can learn something. And another recommendation is eye contact. Now, I noticed throughout I believe you are looking at the screen, but it is very important for us to look directly to the camera. When we do directly look at the camera, and it feels that the proximity, the closure to the audience is there, so that the audience feel the genuinity, the authenticity of what you are saying. So next time when we are doing a project speech or moderation or whatever, I believe it is important for us to have this kind of a direct fixated eye contact with the audience itself in the virtual setting, so that your speech will be more powerful and more effective, and it will be more productive. Overall, you had an amazing panel discussion where I learned a lot throughout this panel discussion, and you did a great job as a moderator, putting an effort to it and having an organized structure, the moderation, and of course to challenge yourself a bit, we will work on your eye contact, we'll work on the eye contact and the interactive engagement with the panelists during the moderation. So thank you all for giving me the opportunity. It was a pleasure to be here, and it was an honor and a privilege. Thank you very much. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you, Shehan, for that wonderful evaluation. So we have one more helper that I want to call on, and that's Tavern. He is our grammarian. Tavern, the virtual floor is yours. Travis, I'm sorry.
Thank you, General Evaluator Melvin. So today's phrase was autistic spectrum. Before I return to specifically the term, I just wanted to say there was a lot of rich language in all the sections of the meeting, but especially in the beginning in the panel. For autistic spectrum, we didn't actually hear the word used together or the phrase used together. It was split up. So to begin with, I remember Judith referenced on the spectrum twice in the first portion of the section. And Sam, when she was going through her own descriptions of self, said the word autistic, as well as referencing her ADHD. And then also I heard the term autistic adults in the first section. One of the things that I had to search in the course of the meeting, because I remember hearing this in the last decade, was there was a preference by some to use the term persons with autism versus autistic persons. So I just did a quick Google on that and learned that in some professional climates, folks tend to say persons with autism versus autistic person. So it's just something to keep in mind going forward. But once again, throughout the panel, you heard on the spectrum, or you heard spectrum, or you heard autistic, not autistic spectrum altogether. And that also brought us to a thought of the fact that when we have such a rich topic, or when we have such rich topics and themes, it's good to kind of slow it down, because at times we were using terms like saying autistic and ADHD and using other terms, which it's nice to let them resonate with the audience so that we know that we're getting a lot of information in there. Some other things that came up were a lot of themes of, we talked about career a lot, which helped to keep reinforcing the importance of the fact that we were bridging a gap between not just the presence of neurodiverse communities, but how they can be impactful in the community as a large. Moving forward, we talked a lot about communicating, and also there was a lot of compromise as we got into table topics. So table topics, you had themes of safety and protection, especially when we did the 2 mask role plays. And then there was a lot and compromise, because the whole theme of table topics was compromise. All in all, there was just a lot to keep up with in this meeting. But more than anything, I like that we used a lot of terminology, and I think the audience, I say for myself, we had a chance to really take in a lot of information and feel like it was a productive moment, and like we were a part of something much larger than ourselves. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Travis, for the wonderful report. And I just want to close on this evaluation. I thought it was such a wonderful meeting. It's just different than what I've usually experienced. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's a lot to take from here. It caters, it's a specialty perspective club that caters to a certain audience that I see great success coming from it. So the only thing is that we need to work on streamlining the meeting so we can gravitate, like it's a great idea to have a joke master. So we can't forget to put that in early to bring the humor in, because then we're throwing a lot of wealth, a wealth of knowledge at individuals. And sometimes someone will get lost in that. So we have to streamline how the meeting is probably ran and grow. But other than that, I think it's wonderful. I think the program and everything that you brought to light is great. And I wish you great success. So with that said, I turn it back over to Jenny Lou, our Toastmaster for the afternoon.
Thank you so much, Melvin, our District Club Growth Director. Thanks for supporting this meeting along with all the other attendees. I definitely appreciate you stepping up and contributing your perspectives and having the courage to try things out, even impromptu. This concludes the Toastmasters program for the demonstration meeting. It's an expanded version of that info session. We are still waiting to see if we can get 20 charter members to start this club, to decide when's a great time to meet on a recurring basis, maybe monthly to start, and then also for how long, maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then this way we can also perhaps accommodate the coast of Hawaii all the way to England. These are all questions that we'll need to decide. I think just from a quick poll, I'm curious if anyone is interested in joining this club as a charter member. So do you see a poll by any chance for you to respond to? Yes, no? Does anyone?
Yeah, we see it.
Feel free to respond to the poll for us to get a sense of where we stand. And part of the reason for getting these 20 members is you will play an active role in shaping the direction of this club and co-creating the vision as per a Pathways Toastmasters project, where it literally has a diagram and a roadmap for us to brainstorm ideas and how to map out where this club will take us to reach our goals, as well as beyond, how we can also have an impact in the community by not only raising awareness amongst ourselves, but also to others in our lives, and also having a way to have action in a structured way so that we can bring forth and move forward in this movement to ensure that all others are also valued and respected, or understand what neurodivergent professionals go through, whether they're on the spectrum or not, and also help the neurotypical leaders as well to find a way to deal with their workforce, which is going to be a mix of people from different cultures, different societies, different genders, and also, I guess, different brain makeups too. So I see 71% of the people have responded. Is there anyone else who hasn't taken a chance to respond? If not, I'm going to close the results, and I'm going to just stop sharing, and I'll share the results briefly. So it seems like there are some people who'd like to start this club. If you would, feel free to follow up with me afterwards, or I will follow up with you as well. And then also feel free to sign our guest book so that people can, our team can follow up with you on your specific goals and interests. I will put that in the chat, and this way it'll give us some idea of where you stand, how we can improve upcoming meetings to incorporate your feedback. And I apologize for the people who couldn't vote as co-hosts. If you do need to vote as a co-host, that is one of the feedbacks we can improve from the Pathways Lessons Learned project. Now, in terms of with the 15 minutes we have left, we do have some leadership roles. We're curious if anybody would like to gain experience as a leader in this organization by serving as an officer. In order to charter the club, we need at least a president, a vice president, and a secretary. There are some nominations, but it is not set in stone. It's just a placeholder. So if you'd like to be president or a VP of education, VP of membership, VP of public relations, a secretary or treasurer, or a sergeant at arms, please, by all means, feel free to put it in the chat or contact me. We are looking for that to get a sense. Are there any nominations? You can feel free to nominate yourself as well as someone else if you think they would be interested in gaining experience running a nonprofit 501c3 social enterprise? Hearing none. I do see a nomination where Liam was interested in Sergeant at Arms, and our club co-sponsor Karen Ross Fortunet is also interested in being the Vice President of Public Relations. There's no one interested in being, I see Joni would like to be the Vice President of Education, great. And then if there's nobody who's interested in being a president as a club sponsor, I can take on that role temporarily or for the term, depending on the majority of the charter members, how they vote at the election, which looks like we'll probably have to schedule a business meeting for that to make that decision with majority of the members. And then also other considerations to does anyone have any questions about chartering the club? Going once. So for example,
how many prospective members are you have at the moment? How many you meet?
I think we have at least 8 verbal confirmations, and then we expect at least 15 prospective members to submit we've already received a few applications. We haven't requested them yet, but we will probably follow up after this. And with a few today, hopefully we can reach the 20 by Monday, June 27th, so that we can submit all the paperwork in case there are any issues by June 30th, which is the term end for Toastmasters. We also do have to figure out our membership composition. It seems like it is a mix of existing Toastmasters and new Toastmasters or non-Toastmasters, which means technically we are only allowed 3 existing Toastmasters and 17 new to Toastmasters normally, but we will probably need to create some advanced criteria or dual membership to charter the other route, which is all 20 are dual members or meet some sort of advanced criteria in order for that to happen.
Or a specialty club. I think we have to look at the criteria of specialty clubs. It might be doable that way.
Great, and that's something I can follow up with Melvin, since you're the residential expert for our district for growing clubs. And then the other things to consider aside from the meeting and the meeting time, frequency, and duration, as well as the membership is also our club name, if we want to do something else besides neurodiverse leadership. And also related to that is probably our vision, which is not required to charter the club, but we probably want to discuss that in the upcoming meetings once we do charter it, unless we do that beforehand. All right. We have at least 12 minutes left. Are there any questions regarding the chartering process or anything that the guests and attendees would like to comment about this meeting or Toastmasters or the club itself? Feel free to raise your hands or put a emoticon in the chat so that I can see in the participant window. Don't see any questions. Are there any, feel free, like I said, to share your feedback. We just lost a person who just came back. So welcome back, Celia. If you didn't hear, feel free to sign the guest book so that our leadership team can follow up with your goals and interests, especially if you're interested in joining. Currently, our next meeting, we're thinking tentatively based upon preliminary polls, is Saturday to accommodate Hawaiians all the way to the Brits. It will be require a Saturday most likely, so that it's 9 a.m. in Hawaii to 9 p.m. in the meetings end at 9 p.m. in England. And so that's one suggestion, from perhaps 3 to 5 o'clock or 2 to 4. I'm thinking 3 to 5 because I'm realizing the Californians probably want to eat lunch from 11 to 1 at some point or beforehand. So let's see if we can do that. And then if we don't need to accommodate the Europeans, then it does open us up to perhaps weeknights. Most likely it will be after 8 o'clock Eastern time to accommodate the West Coast people who have to work. So that might be a consideration. Is there any other questions or things that people would like to discuss related to these logistics or the club itself, Toastmasters? I am hearing and seeing nothing. I see Joni raise her hand.
What districts would you be chartering the club in?
We are currently trying to charter this club in District 119 by June 30th, which is the deadline for the Toastmasters term. If it does not charter by then, we'll try to see where the majority of the charter members or have inputs on chartering. And there is an incentive that I'd like to share. One of my favorite business school professors, Chris Harone, he's a former venture capitalist and also award-winning professor and founder of an online business school course that he does to help grow leaders in the future. He offered to give a course code to his public speaking and presentation course on Udemy. So anybody who charters, who helps charter this club before June 30th, where we're trying to collect everything by Monday in case there are any issues, will receive that course code so that you can benefit. Normally the course is $99, sometimes it's discounted. So hopefully that'll compensate for the June meetings if you weren't able to attend, or you can just watch the videos, which we will share unlisted as a video to prospective members until the term end on June 30th. And I see our club co-sponsor has also joined us in case she has anything that she would like to share.
I just want to welcome you all. You look like such a wonderful bunch of people, and I look forward to joining you in the future. I apologize. I'm completely late, but I had to get my son ready for camp, so lots of shopping today to get him ready. But I just wanted to see your faces and just say welcome.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I think we have 8 minutes to spare. If are there any other last minute questions or feedback on how we can improve the panel discussion or the meetings or specific goals? I know in the info session, we had an interactive exercise on social cues, and some of the prospective members wanted more of that. So that's something we can definitely look into, since some of the prospective members, their backgrounds includes coaching. And so we can take into account some of those exercises for helping us recognize the social cues, which is one of the other reasons why we want a mix of neurotypical and neurodivergent perspectives, because sometimes we'll miss each other's cues for different reasons, for what we're used to culturally, how our brains are wired, or what our conditioning from education and has trained us to look for. So these are the things that hopefully by having a mix, this is why this is a pilot group where we are having people who are supportive in learning about neurodiversity so that we can foster empathy and then also team collaboration so that we can make an impact together as you grow as neurodiverse leaders in the club, as well as in your companies and the communities that you're involved in. I see Shahan's hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment before we adjourn the meeting. That is, when I got to know about the meeting, I got to know about the club. Yes, today for me it's today morning, and coming from a South Asian country, coming from a country like Sri Lanka, where mental health is not considered to be a priority, and topics like neurodiversity, topics like neurodivergence, it's not that popular and people are not aware of it. But we deep down know that it's important, and people are suffering through it, and people are not getting, everyone is not having a proper awareness of it. And I would like to congratulate, or I would like to send my big shout out to Toastmaster Jenny Liu for organizing this kind of thing. It's quite amazing, and I salute you from all the way from here, from a tiny island in the Indian Ocean, because it is a timely need, and what you're trying to do is, and to have rather than segregation, but have a place where all can work together, mingle together, and to learn from each other, and to, because the world is now it's changing, and people, it's more inclusive, and it has to be inclusive, and these kind of small initiatives have a larger impact. I believe it has a larger impact. So what you are trying to do here is quite remarkable. And when you said about the meeting, and if I take it, it's 1:40 over here in Sri Lanka, 1:40 a.m. But still, I just wanted to. You told me that it's gonna be midnight for you. You're not gonna wake up. And is it okay if you're there? I said no. I'll be there because I saw something. Just like Dhananjay Hettiarachchi said, I saw something in the club itself. I congratulate, and I wish this club will continue with this great cause and shine further in Toastmasters International and beyond. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Shahan. Actually, the credit goes to the two parents of autistic kids in my area as an area director, Karen Ross Fortunet, as well as Quentin Mezzatine, when he gave his international speech contest at the area level. He shared his personal story of being a parent of an autistic son. And that's what inspired me, in part because he had an entrepreneurial spirit where he wouldn't let the clinicians who said his son was going to be limited stop him or his son. And that inspiration and mindset is something that I hope other parents can follow suit with. Judy Uttal, who also is a passionate Toastmaster, who also has started a gavel club for her son, who's now 30 years old, so that he can progress and also engage as a leader in his community and find his dream job. And so I think this initiative was something that we pulled together where everybody contributed a plant in their seed to help others discover themselves more. And Liam, for example, is also another person who I met in that journey, thanks to Quentin and Karen, where I met Judy, and then Judy referred me to Liam. This is how it all started, in this whole social networking connection, where normally these social dynamics are a challenge for neurodivergent professionals. But I think we're learning that by having a safe, supportive network, it facilitates these connections, so that hopefully a meeting of great minds or diverse minds, neurodiverse minds, will lead to something better for the benefit of society and our lives, whether it's professionally or personally. And I see we have 2 minutes left. I can share the typical slide of the benefits of Toastmasters if people would like, but if you have any other comments, feel free to put them in the chat. I will stick around for the virtual superpower happy hour, which is my frame of finding a way to get to know each of the potential prospective members or guests on how we can celebrate our differences and find a way for every differently abled person to be able to contribute to society. And that involves, for example, the Pathways ethical framework that Toastmasters provides for a systematic way to define what is the issue, list those facts, so that you can then figure out what are the core values that are impacted, and figure out what are the options amongst all the stakeholders, so that you can move forward with some potential decisions and understand what are those impacts for good, for better, or worse, and then help you with a checklist to decide, does it produce the most good over harm? Does it respect everyone's rights? Is everyone treated equally? Does this serve the community? And does it help you become the leader that you aspire to be? This was something that I wish I had learned way earlier in my Toastmasters journey to save me the heartache of recreating or reinventing my own framework, so that I could benefit in all these ways of Toastmasters, where I can develop my communication skills, I could have more confidence, and also learn better to listen and talk less, even though when I started, I was on the other spectrum of not saying a word at all, or being afraid to say, or being afraid to interject. And then finding a way that we all can work together to reconcile these diverse perspectives when we form a team to storm, norm, and perform, and be inclusive. Because when you include people, people are part of the solution. They're more likely to support it, and you're more likely to increase retention in your organization. So hopefully in the info session and this meeting, we've shown how Toastmasters has the potential to help autistic professionals as well as leaders who are neurotypical, because most likely your team is going to be a mix of neurodiverse professionals where you may want to understand both perspectives to be able to figure out how you can harness and realize their full potential for their communication and leadership capabilities. And hopefully those stats that we mentioned were so low, we can improve that. So I will leave this at, since it's time is up, please make sure you sign the guest book. Thank you for all the volunteers who stepped up, especially on short notice, to make this 3-week effort to start a club happen, hopefully. And so if you have any questions, I will stick around. It is now 4:01. I will adjourn the meeting officially.